Tantor Audio presents How to Pursue a Princess by Karen Hawkins. Narrated by Alison Larkin. 1. From the Diary of the Duchess of Roxburghe. Since, while under my roof, my goddaughter Miss Rose Balfour met and married my great-nephew the Earl of Sinclair, people have been whispering that I am the first word in matchmaking, the perfectress of romance, the grand curator of courtship, and, my favourite, the Duchess of Hearts. Naturally, I'm well aware that these titles are ridiculous, for I had so little to do with Rose and Sin's romance. It happened on its own, with very little assistance from me. Except when needed, of course. Those who know me best realise that I never interfere in the lives of others, not unless they need it, and are crying out for help in such a way that one cannot ignore their desperate pleas. For example, take Rose's sister, the lovely Miss Lily Balfour. If ever a young woman was in need of a husband, it is she, and I'm certain she's begging for help, but is just too proud to do it aloud. Fortunately, I am not deaf to her silent pleas, and am determined that she will accept one of the many invitations I've sent to her. So far, though, all of them have been politely refused. However, I shall not despair, for I'm sure there must be a way to help the poor desperate lass. Keith Manor, Scotland, May 2, 1813. Lily Balfour blinked, but the words on the paper still swam before her eyes, numbers and words merging into a befuddled mess. I don't understand. How did this happen? Pacing before the fire, Papa shook his head, his white hair standing on end where he'd run his hands through it. Oh, I don't know, I just don't know. He was showing his age more than usual this evening, worry etching deep lines on his face. I didn't realise the terms were so dire. Lord Kirk said... What? Dahlia, who'd been sitting quietly to one side of the fireplace, stared at their papa. You borrowed funds from Lord Kirk? Lord Kirk was their neighbour, a wealthy, grumpy, taciturn widower who'd been horribly scarred across one side of his face by an accident of some sort. Lily wasn't sure how, for he never spoke of it. In fact, he rarely spoke about anything or to anyone, except to her sister Dahlia. Some months ago, Lily had discovered that somehow Dahlia had been lured into speaking with Lord Kirk, even visiting his library and talking for hours about books they'd read. Neither Lily nor her oldest sister Rose had been happy about the relationship. Warm, friendly, lovely Dahlia could do far, far better than such a grumpy, taciturn man. Fortunately, before many weeks had passed, Lord Kirk had said something insulting about Papa, and the always loyal Dahlia had broken off all contact with the man, which had relieved everyone. "How could you?" Dahlia demanded now, her eyes blazing. Papa winced. "Now don't look like that. I planned on paying back the funds. If things had gone well, you'd never even have known that I'd borrowed them." Lily waved the loan papers. "Apparently things didn't go as planned, and now you owe the funds and the interest and a penalty and... Oh, Papa!" He rubbed a hand over his face. "What have I done? I should have paid more attention, but... Lily, I don't know how it is, but I could have sworn the percent was far less than what it is." "You didn't read the terms?" He flushed. "Of course I did. I just don't remember them." Lily dropped the papers on the table and exchanged a worried glance with her sister, who looked as bemused as Lily felt. Dahlia, always the pragmatist, folded her hands in her lap, her brow furrowed. "Papa, why did you take out this note? However did you spend £3,000? He wrung his hands. "Oh, that. Well, I wanted you both to have a season in London, as your sister once had." Lily shook her head. "Nonsense, we've never asked for such a thing. Besides, Dahlia added. "Rose promised to take us into society when she returns from her honeymoon in 3 months."
"Yes, but that's so far away," he said, looking a bit desperate. "You both should have your season now, so I borrowed some funds and invested them, knowing that if all turned out well, then I could surprise you."
"Humph," Lily said. Dahlia lifted her brows in disbelief. "What did you invest in?" He gulped, but said in a defiant tone, "Flowers." A known horticulturalist, his undying passion was his pursuit of the perfect rose, one he intended on calling the Balfour Rich Red. "You didn't," Lily said. Dahlia's brows snapped down. "This loan had nothing to do with paying for us to have a season, did it? You just wanted the funds for your flowers." Papa didn't reply. Lily took a steadying breath. How did you convince Lord Kirk to loan you such an amount for something as far-fetched as rose development?
"I told Kirk it was for a personal matter. Being a gentleman, he didn't ask for more."
"So he made you this large loan for an unknown reason?" Dahlia asked, suspicion still bright on her face.
"Well, yes." Papa raked a hand through his hair. "It was a gentleman's agreement, so I thought that if I couldn't pay, he'd simply renegotiate the note. But instead—"
Dahlia's eyes sparkled with anger as she turned to Lily. "I think less of Lord Kirk for agreeing to such a ludicrous arrangement. He had to know Papa'd never be able to repay such a sum." "One would think," Lily agreed. "Papa, you've said time and again that the man's the devil." Papa held out his hands in a supplicating manner.
"He's the only wealthy man I know."
"And so you knowingly entered a devil's arrangement." Dahlia's voice shook. "All to order yet more flowers."
"And build a new hothouse and repair the others."
When his daughters continued to glower at him, he added rather lamely,
"Which I only did so that I could send both of you to London for a season, of course."
"Balderdash," Dahlia said. Lily pinched the bridge of her nose. "I cannot believe this." His shoulders slumped.
"I know. It was madness, but I had good intentions."
"Good intentions won't repay a loan," Lily returned sharply. "If you owed those funds to anyone else, I'd say we should throw ourselves on their mercy and ask for more time. But since it's Lord Kirk—" She shook her head. "He'd refuse," Dahlia finished in a stiff tone.
"It's all my fault."
Papa clasped his hands behind his back and dipped his head, his pacing feverish.
"I've made such a mull of things. Now that I've read the papers, I can see that the terms of the loan weren't what I'd hoped, but—"
"Not what you'd hoped?" Lily said, unable to help herself. "Papa, I don't know how you planned to repay the interest, much less the principal. The terms are outrageous. In order to meet this loan, we have to find £3,000 in 1 month."
"Lily, please, you must understand. I thought that with a new greenhouse and more funds to invest in buds, I could finally afford to have the exotics shipped from China that I need to develop the Balfour Rich Red. Once that was done, we'd be able to sell the roses for a phenomenal profit. Why, just look at how well the Balfour Rose has been selling."
"Well," Lily almost choked, "over the last 3 years you've made a total of—" She picked up the ledger and flipped to the last ink-spattered page. £300 and 6 shillings.
Papa looked startled. "Is that all? Good God! That's—"
Papa raked a hand through his white hair, mussing it even more.
"Oh, dear."
Lily closed the ledger. "Perhaps if we gave some of the funds back, then Lord Kirk would find it in his heart to—"
"It's gone,"
Papa said sadly. "All £3,000? He nodded miserably.
It seemed so much at first, but then one of the greenhouses sprang a leak which cost much more than I expected, and then there were issues with the water pipes we had installed for the mister which caused—" He shuddered. "And all of that meant weeks of delay. By that time your sister Rose had gotten engaged and then married, and that took yet more time from my work, and—" He spread his hands helplessly. "Time passed, and then—"
"The note came due," Dahlia finished. "It's past due." Lily tapped her finger on the paper. 2 months ago. Dahlia blinked. "Then why are we just now finding out about this?" Papa sighed.
"I was hoping Lord Kirk would forget about it."
"You hoped he'd forget a loan for £3,000?
"Well, yes," Papa said defensively. "Since I accepted the loan, he's never said a word, not once. But then," Papa sighed, "this morning he visited after breakfast."
"Kirk was here?" Dahlia's voice cracked on the last word.
"Yes, while you were still abed. I had just finished breakfast and had come out into the foyer, and he arrived as I was gathering my coat and hat. He was very polite in his request, uneasy even, as if he didn't wish to ask for the funds at all."
"He must need the money," Dahlia said. "Odd, because he certainly seems well-heeled. His house is of the first stair, and he has so many horses and carriages."
"I wondered that myself."
"So Kirk asked for repayment," Lily said impatiently. "What did you tell him?"
"That I could pay it, of course, just not right away. He said that so long as I repaid him within the next month or so, all would be well. He actually seemed a bit embarrassed about the whole thing."
"He should be," Dahlia said sharply, "especially after charging such an exorbitant amount of interest." "But it's worse than mere interest." Lily tapped the note again with one finger. "Not only has Papa made a loan he can't repay, but he used Keith Manor as collateral." "What?" Eyes wide, Dahlia turned to Papa. "It's not yours. There's an entail on the house and land." Papa brightened.
"Then the note won't stand?"
Lily grimaced. "Papa, it means that not only do you owe the funds, but if Lord Kirk sets forth a complaint, you could end up in jail for using something that's not yours as collateral."
"Prison?"
Papa looked as if someone had just hit him in the stomach.
"Good God!"
Dahlia pressed a hand to her temple. "Oh, no!" Silence filled the room, broken only by the crackling fire. Lily wished Rose were home. As the oldest sister, she had always been the one to solve their problems. But now that Rose was on the continent with her new husband, Lily was left to handle the problems that beset their little family, a task she wasn't certain she was ready for, especially now that Papa had thrown them into such a fix. Lily's gaze flickered to her sewing basket at her feet, and she had to curl her fingers into her palms to keep from reaching for it. Just this morning she'd taken the bodice from an old gown made of pink jaconet and, turning it inside out so that it could serve as a lining, was fitting it inside a shell of brown kerseymere. Once she'd added long sleeves and trimmings, it would be a fashionable spencer. Nothing gave Lily more pleasure or peace than sewing. She was good at it, too. Her sisters were forever telling her that she was far better than any Edinburgh modiste. It was a pity she couldn't just set up a modiste's shop and earn the funds to pay Papa's loans. Sadly, though she'd enjoy it very, very much, it would take years to gain enough clientele to pay back such a huge amount. Papa sighed.
"I'd thought to ask Rose's new husband for enough money to cover the loan, but they left for their honeymoon before I could think of a way to do so."
"I'm glad you didn't," Lily said sharply. "Lord St. Clair and Rose are deeply in love. It would have been awkward if you'd asked for money the second she wed him."
I know."
A hint of wistfulness coloured Papa's voice.
"Although I doubt St. Clair would have thought it so much. £3,000 is but a pittance to a man like him."
"But not to Rose."
Yes, you're right, of course."
Papa sank into a chair across from them, his shoulders sagging.
I wish I'd never borrowed those funds.
Dahlia took a deep breath. As do we all. I suppose I could talk to Lord Kirk.
No,
Lily said.
Now, wait a moment.
Papa eyed Dahlia thoughtfully.
Kirk is fond of Dahlia. Perhaps she can...
He was fond of her, Lily corrected. They had a falling out. Dahlia's face was bright pink. I don't mind speaking to him again if I must.
There,
Papa interjected, looking hopeful. No, no, and no. Lily sent Papa a stern look. I won't have it. Papa read her meaning in her gaze.
Yes, he said abruptly. You're right, I was just thinking, but it's best if we find another way.
He looked at his daughters regretfully.
I should have never involved the two of you. This is my fault. I must find the answer somehow, and if it comes to prison, then that's where I'll go, and...
No, Dahlia said. I will talk to Lord Kirk. It's the only way. When Lily started to speak, Dahlia added, It won't be a sacrifice. He's a little gruff, but he has a surprising sense of humour, and... Dahlia fidgeted with a button on her pocket. He wishes to marry me. Lily's heart sank. Oh, no, you never said a word. Because I refused him, so there was no need. Perhaps if I agree, then he will see his way to forgive the note and...
No, Papa said. Good God, Dahlia, he's twice your age.
No, he's not. He's only 8 years older. 8? Lily couldn't keep the disbelief from her voice. I find that hard to believe, but whatever his age, he's too old for you. Besides, if anyone is to get us out of this predicament through an advantageous marriage, it should be me.
You?
Papa looked surprised.
But you've always said you'd never marry.
Because I've never met anyone who has sparked my interest. Nor has anyone shown any interest in me, which is a perfect set of happenstances. But now that Rose is gone, I'm the oldest, so it's up to me to resolve this issue. Dahlia looked troubled. Lily, you can't. Why not? Lily forced a smile. It's not as if I would have ever opened a modiste's shop anyway. That is a mere dream. I've been thinking lately that I'd like to taste a more fanciful way of life. Just think of the parties and gowns, amusements and luxurious apartments, and once I'm wed to a wealthy gentleman, Dahlia can come and stay with me. The more Lily thought about it, the more certain she was that this was the way to proceed. Besides, what other options were there? Dahlia clasped her hands in her lap. No, Lily, that sounds lovely, but who would you marry? There are no single gentlemen except Lord Kirk for miles and miles. Our godmother is forever inviting me to her social events. She invited me to a house party which begins quite soon, in fact. So, the means of meeting an eligible party is readily available. I should respond to her invitation as soon as I can. She frowned. Where is it? I tucked it away somewhere. Lily stood and crossed to the small tray that sat upon a side table. She pulled out a stack of correspondence and looked through it. Here it is. She waved a thick missive written on heavy pink paper. I don't know about this. Dahlia's voice was tinged with concern. While it sounds like a simple matter to find and marry a wealthy man, especially with the help of our godmother, I wonder if the thing can be accomplished in such a short time. We only have a month or so. Which means that I cannot dawdle. But, Lily, what if you don't meet anyone worth falling in love with at the Duchess's house party? What then? I shall leave the quality of available suitors to our godmother. She always promises a bevy of what she terms... Lily opened the letter and read, eligible and handsome young men of good fortune and family. When she puts it that way, how could I fail to fall in love with at least one of them? Papa was looking more hopeful by the minute.
Oh, it's a capital idea, Lily. It just might work.
Of course it will. Lily resumed her seat and placed the letter into Dahlia's waiting hand. Her sister read through the missive. "The Duchess is certainly bold in her purpose. I dislike that." Up until now, Lily hadn't liked it either, which was why she hadn't accepted any of her godmother's invitations, but now a growing sense of determination filled her. "She's merely being kind. She knows our marriage prospects are quite dim here at Caith Manor." "I suppose so." "So it's settled. I'll go to the Duchess's house party where I'll meet a lovely wealthy man and solve all our problems." Papa brightened. "I dare say a house party will be quite fun, too. According to Rose, the Duchess plans many amusements for her guests." "Exactly," Lily said with a bravado she didn't feel. "And I just made some new gowns for the coming year and was wondering where I'd ever find events formal enough to wear them." "Your gowns are without compare," Dahlia complimented, obviously still troubled but trying to smile. Lily pursed her lips, her mind moving rapidly over the items in her wardrobe. "I shall need some new shoes and 2 pairs of long gloves, for mine are quite worn, but that should be enough for now." "You may borrow my gloves, which are like new, for I've used them only once. You may also borrow my blue half-boots and both pairs of my ballroom slippers. Oh, and you must take the new red cape that you made me. It's still chilly in the evenings." "Thank you, Dahlia, that should set me quite well." She caught her father's look, noting the sad turn of his mouth, and her irritation at him disappeared. He was a dear man, but scientific of mind, which left very little in the way of common sense. But despite his faults, she loved him dearly. "Papa, don't look like that." She went to stoop beside his chair, where she hugged him tightly. "We'll find a way out of this mess, but you must promise that in the future you won't take any more silly chances and put so much at risk." He hugged her back, smelling as he always did of mint, lavender, and potting dirt.
"I will never again be so foolish, but—" He tilted her chin up so that her eyes met his. "Are you certain you wish to do this? I won't have you making an unnecessary sacrifice."
Lily thought of Dahlia's hesitant offer to talk to Kirk, and, aware that her sister watched, forced a merry smile. "Yes, yes, 1,000 yeses. I'll enjoy the parties and rides while the Duchess finds me a wealthy, handsome, generous husband whom I shall love forever." Lily planted a kiss on Papa's forehead and then stood. "Come, Dahlia, you must help me pack. I've men to impress and a future husband to find." 2. From the Diary of the Duchess of Roxburghe. "I sent out a lure to Lily Balfour, and it seems that she has finally, to use one of Roxburgh's horrid fishing terms, taken the bait. Now I've but to plan a house party and cajole certain eligible young men to exchange the entertainments of London for a few weeks of amusements at my country estate here in Scotland. Such a feat might be difficult for other hostesses, but I have the ultimate enticement to lure handsome bachelors from the madness of London season, fields teeming with foxes and pheasant, and a stable filled with the finest hunters imaginable. Bless Roxburghe, he is an excellent husband." Floors Castle, May 7, 1813. A young footman ran lightly down the back steps into the servants' quarters, hurried around the corner, then knocked on the washroom door. A muffled voice bade him enter, and he hurried inside only to stop in astonishment. 3 tubs of warm water had been placed in a line where 6 housemaids, working 2 together, scrubbed roly-poly pugs. More maids and the housekeeper, Mrs. Cairness, worked at another table where they dried additional balls of fur with large towels. One of the pugs barked and then attacked the towel as the housekeeper tried to dry him. She chuckled and played tug-of-war with him for a moment before she wrapped the other side of the towel about his round body and rubbed him dry. Finished, she kissed the pug's head before she handed him to a waiting footman who carried him to the next table. There, 2 maids and the butler, Mr. MacDougall, stood in wait. The maids held a pug between them as the butler carefully combed its hair, trimmed its nails, then tied a kerchief about its thick neck. The footman, belatedly remembering his purpose, stepped forward. "Mr. MacDougall, I—" The butler held up a gloved hand. The footman gulped back his words. MacDougall squinted at the dog in front of him, then picked up a silver-backed comb and carefully ran it over the dog's left ear. It was an older dog, his muzzle well greyed as he sat panting, his tongue hanging to one side of his wide mouth as he stared at the footman through milky eyes. The footman shifted from foot to foot, waiting. Finally, the butler tilted the little pug's face up and said with a note of disapproval, "There's a good lad, Randolph. Now you look quite the gentleman. I believe her Grace will approve." The pug's little tail twirled as he barked in agreement. The butler placed the silver comb back on the table and said to the maid, "Take Randolph to the kitchen for his dinner. Cook was preparing their dishes when I left a half-hour ago. Once you've finished, return here. Her Grace will be home soon, and they must all be bathed by the time she arrives." "Yes, Mr. MacDougall." The maid curtsied, then carefully gathered Randolph and hurried from the room, careful to close the door behind her. The butler turned to the footman. "Now, John, what did you need?" John blinked. Lord, but he'd almost forgotten why he'd come in search of the butler. It wouldn't do to be so slack in his duties before Mr. MacDougall. The butler was a fixture at Magnificent Floors Castle, having served her Grace since he'd been a young lad of 17, the only servant who could claim such longevity. As such, MacDougall had unprecedented power. "Yes, sir, I came to tell you that—" "Here, Moira." Mrs. Cairness was toweling dry another of the pugs. "Take poor wee Teeny to Mr. MacDougall to comb. He's as dry as we can make him." The housemaid bundled the dog in his towel and carried him to MacDougall, who eyed the damp hair with a critical eye. As the butler began to comb the dog, he asked, "Well, John, out with it." "Yes, sir. I'm sorry I was distracted by the dogs. Her Grace just returned from the vicar's and wishes to—" "Her Grace has returned? Why didn't ye say so?" MacDougall put down the comb and peeled off his gloves. "She wasn't due back for 2 more hours. Mrs. Cairness, would ye finish here?" The housekeeper handed a towel to a waiting chambermaid and then crossed to the butler's side. "Of course, ye go ahead and welcome her Grace. I'll have the dogs brought to her once they're all dried, combed and fed." "Thank ye, Mrs. Cairness." The butler picked up a stiff brush from a shelf beside the door and brushed his clothes. "Well, John, where is her Grace?" "She went to her bedchamber to change, but she asked that ye meet her in the sitting-room as she's a grand project for ye." MacDougall swallowed a sigh. "What are ye a-doing now, your Grace?" He replaced the brush on the shelf and then made certain his cuffs were in order. "John, tell cook that her Grace will wish for dinner after all, for she dinna stay at the vicar's as planned." The footman bowed smartly. "Yes, sir." He dashed off. Several minutes later, MacDougall arrived in the sitting-room just as her ladyship settled into a chair opposite Lady Charlotte, who was tucked into the corner of the gold silk settee. Both ladies appeared agitated, their faces flushed, their chins lifted. While it wasn't unusual to see her Grace in a taking, her being a woman of passion, as it were, it was odd to see her companion so overcome. The youngest daughter of the late Earl of Argyll, Lady Charlotte was a spinster who'd made her home with her Grace and was now an indispensable part of the household. She was the Duchess's constant companion and was known for her calm, soothing presence. Now, though, Lady Charlotte's cheeks were stained with colour. "Of all the nerve," she said, her button-bow mouth pressed into a disapproving line. "I've never been so insulted." "Nor I'd like to—" The Duchess snapped her mouth closed, her brilliant blue eyes flashing over her prominent nose. MacDougall bowed before the Duchess. "Ye're home early, your Grace. I've asked cook to prepare ye and Lady Charlotte a nice light supper." "Thank you," Her Grace said impatiently. "As you've guessed, we didn't stay at the vicar's." "No," said Lady Charlotte, her lace mob cap askew, "not after that woman arrived." MacDougall waited, but Lady Charlotte and her Grace merely sat stewing.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?